Hello, good afternoon. Today, Valentina and I will be talking about Australian bushfires. We'll be analyzing this particular case and its environmental policies in the light of coupled human natural system theory. This is our table of content. We'll be giving a short introduction and background about this specific case. Then we'll be talking about the past actions and their limitations, followed by the chance theory in Australian bushfires analysis and possible solutions. So to begin with a short introduction and background. So firestorms are not new to Australia, which is a country typically characterized as hot and dry. Its eucalyptus forests have a unique relationship to fire, having its trees actually depending on it to release its seeds. So as Australia has suffered its hottest days and driest months on record in 2019 and 2020, extreme heat and drought created more tinder to fuel the fires. So according to Dermot O'Gorman, which is the chief executive officer of the World Wide for Nature in Australia, this particular case has been ranked as one of the worst wildfire disasters in modern history, devastating millions of acres and animals. So we can conclude that the fires and weather conditions we were able to witness in the last months of 2019 and the beginning of 2020 are unprecedented. So the conclusions many scientists have established is that these circumstances are a function of climate change, causing extreme heat and volatile conditions that are producing the types of disorders that early season burning that we do not normally see in Australia. So our thesis supports the statements of these many scientists worldwide, in which it is established that the heightened intensity and frequency of Australia's wildfires can be indeed explained by predictions regarding global warming and extremely heated conditions around the world. Consequences could be catastrophic, having higher temperatures, rising sea levels, frequent and intense marine heat waves, high intensity storms, cool season decline, and longer fire seasons with more dangerous fire weather. So having said this, as extreme weather and unnatural conditions become more frequent with climate change, we should begin trying to better understand what these disasters actually mean to threatened species and ecosystems, and possibly come to better management actions and a more efficient policy-making process. So now we'll be talking about the past actions and environmental policies the Australian government has established. So according to studies developed by the Australian government, the nation is forecasted to be severely impacted by climate change, facing the following changes by 2030. First of all, a 41 degrees Celsius of warming in temperatures. Second, up to 20% more months of drought. Third, up to 25% increase in days of very high or extreme fire danger. And lastly, increases in storm surges and severe weather events. So taking the possible effect and the cases of 2020 into consideration, the Australian government has begun a policy making process towards the creation of a clear energy future. This includes plans to dramatically cut pollution by 28% before 2030 under the Paris Climate Agreement, introducing a carbon price, investing billions of dollars in renewable energy, transforming the energy sector away from high pollution sources such as brown coal, and establish new mechanisms and processes for better land management. But we need to analyze why these environmental policies have not worked in Australia. Mr. Morrison's government, which is the Prime Minister of Australia, has been accused of not doing enough to address climate change and effectively implement these previously mentioned policies, which experts say could increase the intensity, frequency, and scale of wildfire disasters throughout the country. This could be because Australia parties and voters have become more polarized over time, leading to wild swings in policymaking as the Labour Party has pursued more climate-friendly policies, while Morrison's Liberal Party has been more hostile to climate action. So given this, bad blood between both parties has complicated efforts to build and effectively establish these policies and durable climate policies. As a result, it is unlikely to see meaningful changes in Australian climate policy until next election scheduled for 2022. though the current government may try to improve its fire prevention record and finish effectively implementing the previously mentioned policies. And having said this, as the fires make climate change a more urgent priority for the Australian people, Prime Minister Morrison could possibly face a public reckoning regarding these issues.
So moving on to the application of chance theory. The coupled human and natural systems in fire-prone landscapes are characterized by complex interactions between fire-prone natural systems and human communities where wildfire is viewed as undesirable. Through the application of the theory, we can outline the different challenges that can further contribute to the complications behind the Australian bushfires. The first challenge is the division between the human system and the natural world. Fire-prone landscapes deliver a variety of human services, such as wood fiber, and fuel. Nonetheless, they also deliver ecosystem services, such as regulation of carbon emissions and biodiversity. Many of these are referred to as wildland-urban interface, defined as narrow transition zones between unpopulated fire-adapted landscapes and populated areas that have elevated risk levels for loss of homes and lives to wildfire. Thus, humans have attempted to reduce the landscape's heterogeneity through vegetation management, wildfire suppression, and fire ignition to reduce said risk. Nonetheless, although many of these actions have resulted in short-term alleviation, they tend to lead to greater crisis in the future and the development of positive feedback loops in the long term. The reason for this is that there are various social cultural factors that influence our perception and bias of fire-prone landscapes. Contrary to our understanding, human fire suppression techniques have changed successional pathways and habitats for processes and species that depend on fire. Consequently, wildfire suppression activities of the past may now be contributing to an increase in area and intensity of the fire as a result of fuel accumulations, and like Ricardo said, well, as a result of climate change. Now, quoting Lily Pelling, a famous biologist, the use by the media of terms such as catastrophic to describe wildfires can color social perception of fire outcomes, despite most wildfires having a mix of both desirable and undesirable ecological effects. The second challenge lies in the misunderstanding between feedback loops between the natural system and the human system. Even when there is good knowledge of how human actions can influence resource conditions, residents may still make decisions that might be considered as undesirable by resource management and emergency personnel. Such behavior can result not only from ignorance of potential adverse outcomes, but it can also result from residents making reasoned trade-offs regarding the expected benefits and costs of their actions, going back to what we studied in class about the tragedy of the commons. Now, the third challenge lies in the external drivers, uncontrollable drivers, such as climate, weather, and social political demands that are not allowing fiscal policy to reach a consensus amongst the various lobbying groups. Next slide, please. So in regards to possible solutions, we came up with three. The first is to inform and educate the people living in said landscapes on the proper tools and prevention methods that will not result in long-term tipping points and that will not sacrifice long-term advancement for short-term alleviation. The second solution is the application of proper risk management tactics, aware of the feedback loops that do not put to risk the human systems or the natural world, to create a synchrony that works for both systems. And finally, the increased communication channels with stakeholders to learn from them and their value systems and decision making, and to ask questions regarding the effects of government policies, the potential for a biomass economy to subsidize fuel treatments and restoration, or the development and implementation of strategies that create more resilient forests in the face of fire and climate change, etc. So that's it. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and that you were able to learn a little bit more about the Australian fires and their relation to the chance theory.